Hello, everyone. A quick word on legal rights and protections available to the victims of the recent California wildfires, specifically the wildfires in the Los Angeles area, and to the victims of other California wildfires in recent years. There have been a lot of reports coming into my firm, a lot of reports in the community generally about unscrupulous or oppressive landlords who are violating the law and taking advantage of folks who have had their homes burned down or who have now been in the unfortunate position of having to look for housing when you have 74,000 or so other folks who have lost their homes also looking for housing at the same time in the Los Angeles area. And there are landlords and property managers and investors and other folks out there who are taking advantage of this situation and have been taking advantage of similar situations over the last couple of years. But for those of you who are in the unfortunate situation of having lost your home, God bless you, and we hope that you're well and safe. And for those of you who had the misfortune of having to look for housing at the same time as so many people lost their homes to these recent fires, you are not alone, number one, and number two, there are a number of very strong legal rights and protections available to you. Number one, if you have lost your home or if you are looking for housing during the declared state of emergency, the state of emergency that the governor declared by executive order in the last couple of months, then a landlord may not increase the rent that was previously charged to a former tenant that existed before the state of emergency or that existed at the state of emergency, and where the unit is now vacant, the landlord may not charge rent above 10%. The landlord may not advertise, offer for rent, or charge rent that is above 10%. If the landlord does do that, and if you are in the unfortunate position of having to pay that rent, then you, as the tenant, have the right to sue the landlord in civil court for unfair business competition. That's an unfair business competition under California law. You can sue the landlord to get your excess rent back, to get penalties, and also to get statutory attorney's fees under California law. That is a huge benefit and a huge protection for California renters. So please be advised that you have that right. You also have the right, in addition to having there be civil remedies for the unfair business practice of having a landlord take advantage of you and defraud you out of increased rent, there is also the added benefit of having this be a crime. So if you find yourself in the situation where a landlord is charging 10%, above 10% for rent, then you can report that activity to the local police department or the California Attorney General's office, and they have been sending out demand letters, basically demanding that the landlord stop this practice and rent the unit at the rent that was previously offered or within allowable limits. So you have protections there. Number two, generally in California, there is California statewide rent control and rent protection on a yearly basis. If you are in a non-rent control jurisdiction, so if you are essentially in a rural area, or you are outside of Los Angeles County, or you are outside of any jurisdiction that has a local rent control ordinance, then you are covered in most instances by the statewide just cause for eviction and rent control ordinance. That ordinance provides that landlords may not charge in excess of 10% generally for rent increases on an annual basis. So generally, the landlords may charge 5% plus the cost of living adjustment. You have to look at what 5% plus the cost of living adjustment is in each year to figure out what the allowable limit is. The California State Department of Fair Employment and Housing publishes these. And I believe also the governor's office publishes those allowable rent limits on a yearly basis, so you can check that out. But generally, no more than 10%. This tracks with the statewide price gouging laws, which are in effect during a state of emergency. So, also, if you are in a local jurisdiction like Los Angeles County and you're covered by a local rent control ordinance, then the local rent control ordinance governs, and your rent cannot be increased beyond the limits of the local rent control ordinance. So in LA County this year, that's 4%. In other jurisdictions, it may be different. So that's if you're generally looking for housing, or you're already in housing. You have to keep those rent limits in mind. Last thing. So if you are a tenant, if you are in the unfortunate position of having lost your home or having to look for housing during this time when so many are already looking for housing and the demand is driving up rents, and also you have a lot of unscrupulous landlords who are looking at tenants maybe a little bit more closely and looking at tenants with the intent of charging increased rent, you might get a situation where a landlord looks at the fact that you're receiving state or federal housing assistance or some form of wildfire assistance, wildfire funds, and you're using those to qualify based on the income standards for housing, or the landlord knows that you're receiving these funds somehow, and you're having to give that information to them, and they're discriminating against you. They're either increasing the rent, they're refusing to rent to you, they're offering you different or less favorable terms or conditions in the rental to you. They're somehow discriminating against you because of your, quote, source of income. Then that is source of income discrimination under California state law. And that is a violation of the civil rights laws, the housing civil rights laws on the books, and you have a cause of action. You have a legal right to sue a landlord for the denial of housing, or for the increase in rent, or for the offering of unfavorable terms or conditions that are not offered to other folks that don't have the federal or state housing assistance or the wildfire subsidy, or whatever source of income you have. So the landlords now, as of a couple years ago, the law changed, and landlords in California may not discriminate against you based on your source of income. And that also includes the fact that you are receiving public assistance. So public assistance meaning federal or state housing subsidies, or any kind of wildfire assistance, a wildfire subsidy or other government benefit to you as a result of your being a victim of the wildfires. So these are just a few of the protections available to you if you have suffered misfortune as a result of these recent wildfires and you're looking for housing. I'll be doing a lot more videos on stuff like this and on residential landlord-tenant law. My firm focuses on residential landlord-tenant law and other areas, and we've been getting a lot of complaints about unfair business practices of landlords in the last couple of months since these tragedies have happened. Thanks so much, and have a great day.